So welcome. I'm so glad you all are here today. We're going to be talking about why we should foster awareness in our classrooms, both self-awareness and social awareness. So let's take a look at this photo. We've got this guy hanging from a strap in Amatski, Croatia. And in the chat box, please respond to the question, how does this photo make you feel? Give you a couple of minutes to answer that question. So you can see by the chat box that there's quite a range of feelings here. Not everybody has the same feeling. Some people are thrilled, exhilarated, feel adrenaline, a sense of adventure, where other people are nervous, terrified, scared, sweaty palms, dizzy. So we all have different emotions, and sometimes in the same situation, we can feel very different things. As you think about this photo, what are some other situations in which you have that same feeling, whether it's thrilled or scared? When might you feel this way? So go ahead and answer in the chat box when you might have this kind of feeling. Okay. So we've got everything here. First day in a school, giving a presentation, speaking in public, exams, when traveling, hosting a webinar. Thank you, I agree. Trying new things. Okay, great. So let's take a look at another photo. Okay, let's look at this one. How does this photo make you feel? And again, answer in the chat box. So we have, again, a range of emotions here. Loving, care, warm, lovely, but also sad. And the caption says, a caregiver hugs an orphan giraffe. So you might also, maybe, what are some things that you think about when you look at this photo? What does it make you think about? Okay, think about the wildlife in Africa, taking care of animals, saving animals, endangered, animal safety. Why is the giraffe orphaned? The destruction of nature, mutual reliance. Great. Taking care of each other. Okay, so notice the ways that this photo is making us feel something, but it might also make us ask questions about the situation, about issues related to giraffes or to animal conservation in general, about how we take care of animals and what our obligations are to other animals and creatures in the world. Understanding ourselves and others better is part of social and emotional learning. So what is social and emotional learning? Social and emotional learning, or SEL, is a methodology that integrates social and emotional skills into curricula. The Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, or CASEL, is one of the leading sources for information on CEL and defines it as follows. CEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, to feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. If you are new to the term CEL, you may use other terms to talk about similar ideas. Things like global competencies, soft skills, future skills, 21st century skills, well-being, or even critical thinking. Okay, so now we have a poll. Kristen, can you go ahead and put up the poll? Do you focus on social and emotional learning in your classroom now? Choose yes or no. So if everybody could answer. And Kristen, when you have the results of the poll, can you share them or let us know what they are?
Sure, majority is saying yes. Let's give people a couple more seconds here to answer. Yep, looks like a majority saying yes. Few no's.
Okay, yeah. 81% are doing it now, so good. Great, okay. The classroom is often where students are first exposed to people, beliefs, abilities, and cultures that differ from their own. It's important to help students develop skills that will allow them to succeed in a diverse world. So we're going back to the chat box. What do you think are some of the benefits of CEL? So we'll give you a few minutes to answer that question. What are some benefits of CEL? Connection, community, confidence, understanding others, taking responsibility. Great. Great ideas. Bring people together, emotional intelligence, creating a safe space. Castle explains the benefits of CEL as follows. When students have supportive relationships and opportunities to develop and practice social, emotional, and cognitive skills across many different contexts, academic learning accelerates. Hundreds of studies offer consistent evidence that CEL bolsters academic performance. Results from more than 200 studies show that when students practice these skills, they perform better in school, manage stress and depression better, and have better attitudes about themselves, others, and school. Strong social and emotional skills equate with higher levels of well-being and happiness. In addition, these findings were valid up to 18 years later, and both in the United States and other countries, suggesting these skills are applicable to diverse contexts. Now let's look at self-awareness. It's one of the 5 aspects of social and emotional learning. Self-awareness can be defined as the ability to recognize your emotions and how they impact your behavior, as well as acknowledging your strengths and weaknesses to better gain confidence in your abilities. What are the benefits of self-awareness in the classroom? And go ahead and answer in the chat box. We'll give you a couple of minutes. Why should we practice self-awareness in the classroom? Got some great ideas coming in here. Boost confidence, better understanding of each other, manage emotions, build good rapport, to understand our weaknesses. Great. Research has found that people who are self-aware have increased confidence and creativity. In the language learning classroom, this means they are likely to be willing to take risks, which accelerates their learning. They also tend to make better decisions, have stronger relationships, and communicate more effectively. These traits correlate with greater participation in group tasks and in the class overall, which again accelerates learning. Students with self-awareness are more likely to be successful and less likely to lie or cheat. Being self-aware will make them better students and better global citizens. So what defines learners with self-awareness? What can they do? Self-aware learners can recognize their strengths and weaknesses. That's what somebody said earlier in the chat box. They can examine their own prejudices, biases, and assumptions. And they can identify how they feel and how those emotions affect not only themselves, but those around them. So what can we do to promote self-awareness? We can first encourage learners to recognize their strengths and weaknesses. Let's look at an example. Money skills. Kristen, can you go ahead and put up the poll? Okay, choose the sentence that best describes you. I have good money skills, I have average money skills, or I have poor money skills. So we'll give you a moment to answer that poll.
So far, it looks like mostly average money skills. Just give
Mhm.
people a couple more seconds here to answer.
Do you have the results?
It looks like mostly have average money skills, about 65%. About 20% said good money skills, and 15% said poor money skills.
Okay, great. It's important that students recognize their strengths and see weaknesses as opportunities for growth. So in this situation, if you said you have poor money skills, that might be an opportunity for growth. In these activities, from reflect, listening, and speaking to, students are preparing to watch a video about saving money. In the reflect activity, they are asked to reflect on their money skills just like you did. Then they talk to a partner about what they know and what they still need to learn. This not only helps them set personal goals, but it also engages their interest, makes it more personal, so they will pay more attention to the content. When students acknowledge these kinds of strengths and weaknesses and identify skills they want to improve, it helps them set goals. Setting and achieving goals motivates students to learn and builds confidence. Another way we can promote self-awareness in our students is by helping them examine their prejudices, biases, and assumptions. Here's a presentation of a critical thinking skill. Examine assumptions. Assumptions are ideas that we take for granted without questioning. All of us make assumptions at some point or another. Sometimes our assumptions are true, but not always. To be critical thinkers, students need to look for evidence that supports or disproves assumptions and beliefs. Let's take a look at this scenario. I was so surprised I got into my first choice school. Only 5% of the people who applied got accepted. But when I walked into my first class, I didn't understand the topic at all. Everyone else was taking notes and knew what the professor was talking about. Maybe I should drop the class since I'm so obviously not at that level. So in the chat box, think about what is an assumption or assumptions that the speaker is making. Okay, so great. Everybody's identifying the assumptions that the speaker's not good enough, that he's not smart enough, that everybody else understands, that he can't do or she can't do what other people are doing. All right, that they're not up to the mark. Do we have any evidence, and you can answer in the chat box, do we have any evidence that supports that assumption? Okay, so most people are saying, no, there's not a lot that supports the idea that he or she is not smart enough. Okay. Now, is there any evidence here in the scenario that counters it, that contradicts the idea that he or she is just not smart enough to be there? Great. Yes, only 5% got accepted, and the speaker did. Part of a very small group. All right, excellent. Okay, so students then have the opportunity, just like you did, to apply the skill and discuss the same scenario that we just discussed. They identify the assumptions and then talk about the evidence. And finally, students examine their own assumptions in the reflect activity that follows. They think about someone they know who seems very confident at work or at school. What assumptions might they be making about that other person? Are there any facts that support these assumptions? Are there any that counter them? The results of these kinds of activities is greater self-awareness. Okay. Finally, we can promote self-awareness by giving students opportunities to examine their emotions and the effects of those emotions. Self-aware learners can identify how they feel and how those emotions affect not only themselves, but those around them. This activity, from Reflect, Listening, and Speaking 4, guides students to consider their emotions, their impact, and how they might handle them better. Look at the emotions in the box: anger, embarrassment, envy, nervousness, sadness. Sometimes we think of these as negative emotions because they can be hard to feel. In this activity, students first identify emotions that are the easiest for them to notice in themselves and those that are the most difficult. Then they are asked about how easy it is to manage those feelings. When students can recognize and manage their negative emotions, such as anger and sadness, it will help them to be happier. Students also assess their ability to notice emotions in others. In addition, students consider how they react to and deal with the emotions of others. Our relationships can improve when we understand what others are feeling and we can respond appropriately. Activities like these help students develop greater self-awareness. This one also helps them develop social awareness, which we're going to talk about now. Another important aspect of social emotional learning is social awareness, especially now after a few years when students were often studying at home rather than at school. What is social awareness? Okay, so let's go ahead and answer in the chat box. What is social awareness? So we'll take a moment for people to answer that question. Excellent. Being aware of others, empathy, understanding others. Castle defines social awareness as the ability to understand the perspectives of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts. So you guys all had the same ideas as what they define it as. Skills, if you're socially aware, these are some things that you can do. Identifying social cues to determine how others feel, taking on the perspective of others, showing empathy and compassion, showing concern for the feelings of others, and recognizing the strengths of others. So let's take a look at another photo. Okay. How do you think they feel? And answer in the chat box again. So we've got a lot of those negative emotions being recognized here: sad, disappointed, stressed, upset, frustrated. What is happening? What do you think is going on here? Okay, it looks like they're playing a game and they're losing the game. Defeat, upset about how they did, lost the match. All right, and how can we tell? How do you know what's going on and how they feel? Their facial expressions and body language, have their eyes closed, hands on his hips. He's like got his hands up to his face. All right. Looking at facial expressions, body language, and the situation helps us understand what others are feeling. Encouraging students to use these cues will help them increase their social awareness. Okay, now we've got another photo. How is this person feeling? Okay, lots of different emotions possible here. Moved, touched, sad. Could be tears of joy, some kind of strong emotion here. What do you think is causing him to feel this way? What is the context? Okay, it seems like there's some kind of performance. Maybe he's listening to a concert, a speech, watching a movie, a play, could be a rally, something. He seems to be in the audience, paying attention to something, right? Using photos, poems, and stories as prompts to ask questions like these can help increase social awareness. Encouraging students to take on the perspectives of others, to walk in someone else's shoes, helps them to be more socially aware. Here we have a critical thinking box, which helps students explore a little bit more how to think about and use this photo. Okay. After students practice empathizing with the photo, they consider ways to handle emotions, theirs and others. In this activity here, students first think about their own feelings when someone else is upset with them. This increases their self-awareness. They answer questions like, how am I feeling right now? Am I comfortable with that? What would be a good reaction to this emotion? Then they are encouraged to consider their partner's feelings or social awareness, right? How is the other person feeling right now? How can I find out? Finally, they practice their social skills in a positive way. How can I react to his or her feelings in a helpful way? When students are socially aware, they have stronger relationships and friendships and improved well-being. They are also more engaged with the world around them. Classroom activities in which students identify how others are feeling, show concern for those feelings, recognize others' strengths, and take on the perspective of others all help students increase their social awareness. And remember, we're going back and recapping self-awareness. We know that when students are self-aware, they are more engaged and motivated. They are also happier and more confident. Classroom activities in which students identify strengths and weaknesses, examine their prejudices and assumptions, and identify emotions and their effects, foster positive academic outcomes and greater honesty and integrity. And that is the end of the presentation, but I think we have time now for some questions. And Kristen?
Yes, we have a question in the Q&A.
Okay.
It says, I am teaching an online class where there are multi-level students. How can we realize and adopt self-awareness among them?
How can we increase self-awareness in a multi-level class?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, multi-level classes are so hard, aren't they? I think a lot of self-awareness has to do with emotions and understanding strengths and weaknesses. So I think that I've taught several multi-level classes, and sometimes vocabulary is a struggle, right? You have to make sure that people who are at a lower level have enough vocabulary to be able to explain those ideas. Yeah, so I do think that photos can be a good starting point, and reviewing vocabulary, making sure they can identify a variety of emotions can be helpful. You can do, I'm sure you know this, if you're in a multi-level class, you can do different kinds of activities where you group them by students who are on a similar level. So you might put those lower level students together and higher level students in another group, and they could be, answering slightly different questions that are geared towards their level. Another thing that you can do is partner a lower level student with a higher level student. And the higher level student can work a little bit with helping them to explain ideas and helping the lower level student to express what they're trying to say, even if they don't yet have the vocabulary. Does that help at all? I hope.
Okay, we have a few more questions in here. Is social awareness and intercultural competence the same?
There's a lot of overlap. As we said at the beginning, some of these things, social emotional learning is one kind of term for all of these things. But I think when we look at global competencies and what used to be called 21st century skills, but now we're in the 21st century, so I think they're calling them future skills. It's really important that students understand diversity and that they're able to communicate across different cultures, different backgrounds, and so forth. So there might be slight variations, but yes, I think that you can consider cultural competencies and social awareness to be very similar.
Great, thank you. Here's another one. How can we ensure that we are including appropriate activities to encourage self and social awareness?
How can we ensure that we are including those activities?
Appropriate activities to encourage self and social awareness.
Okay, so it's actually, if you just think about no matter what materials you're using in your classroom, whenever you're approaching, a topic, for example, like you saw one about money skills. So let's say you're talking about shopping in your classroom. Well, you can always just take a moment to think as you're planning your lesson, how can I make this, and you do this already. I know if you're teachers, you're always thinking of how can I make this relatable to their lives? How can I make it more personalized, right? And that would be the same thing that you would do here, is try to take a moment, have an activity, ask a question where you are asking students to think about how they feel, how they would do if this is a skill that they have. I know that we have one unit in Reflect that's on directions and maps and how do we find our way in the world. And nowadays, most people just use their phones and they just put in Google Maps or whatnot, and that tells them where to go. But are we losing an essential skill because it activates a different part of our brain if we have to find our way ourselves and not listen to a phone? So if you are able to just kind of stop and take a moment and ask students, okay, can you find your way across town without using your phone? That is increasing self-awareness. And with social awareness, you can do the same thing. Just provide an opportunity, a couple of discussion questions with any content that you have, where you ask them to think about somebody in a different situation, right? Somebody who is unlike them, somebody who might be in a different country, somebody, just ask them to imagine a different situation, and that can increase their social awareness, I think.
Great, thank you. Here's another one. How can we deal with cases of antisocial behaviors in the classroom?
Well, that's a hard one for sure. I think, it depends on the age of the student and how your school and your classroom operates and what their guidelines are. That might sort of dictate the way that you are supposed to proceed. But I feel when we set our classrooms up to be places where, of respect, and we do practice this kind of social awareness and managing emotions, because I think a lot of times that antisocial behavior can come from when people are not regulating their emotions. They feel anger, they're upset, they're frustrated, and they don't know how to manage it. And that's why social emotional learning is so important, is because one aspect of it is trying to regulate or manage those emotions. And so proactively, if you build in some of the activities like this, students might then become better able to kind of like observe, oh, I'm getting upset. What should I do when I get upset? What's a better way to deal with my anger? And try to do it in the context of these are skills everybody needs to have, rather than to be in a situation where, you know, somebody does something antisocial and you have to react in the moment. So.
Okay, thank you. This is the last question. How can we practice self-awareness when there is a huge language barrier in the classroom?
That is tough. At the lower levels, again, we often have, there's a language barrier. Again, problem with vocabulary. And so we first have to try to give students the words that they need in order to identify things. But you can use, at a very low level, you can use things like photos or drawings or something like that to try to get at a feeling or an emotion. For example, really simple, you know, we did, I have good money skills, I have average money skills, I have poor money skills. Well, you know, if you had like little emojis or just, you know, using numbers or faces that people can point to, even if they don't have the language, they're still showing that they understand kind of the concept. So things like that might make it a little bit more accessible for those lower level students who don't yet have the vocabulary and the ability to express themselves. Could be one tool.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that fantastic session. We've been seeing a lot of great feedback in the chat box. And thank you to everyone that joined today. Before you leave, we have a few things to mention. Immediately after the session, you'll be directed to a feedback survey to let us know what you thought. If you are interested in learning more about using Reflect in your classroom, please visit our website or contact your local National Geographic Learning representative. Be sure to join our online community for teachers of English on our social media channels, where we will offer up-to-date information about events, practical classroom tips, exciting real-world content, and new product information. Again, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.